And joining us now from Washington, Peter Bradford, a former U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission member and former executive director of Maine's Task Force on Energy. Mr. Bradford, welcome to Bloomberg's Bottom Line. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, today, Senator Barbara Boxer, who's the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee, and Tom Carper, the chairman of the Clean Air and Nuclear Safety Subcommittee, called on the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, to investigate the vulnerabilities of nuclear facilities. Should that be done? Will that be done? And how much is it going to cost?
Oh, I'm sure it will be done. You know, in the aftermath of the accident at 3 Mile Island, when I was on the NRC, a number of plants of similar design were shut down for several months to assure that they didn't share the vulnerabilities and that the operators were retrained. There was a year-long assessment of the accident itself. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission adopted a very different regulatory framework toward a number of the issues implicated in the accident. It was expensive, but it had to be done. And there's absolutely no doubt that something like that's in store this time, too.
Mr. Bradford, Tokyo Electric's failure to stop the threat of radiation at the Fukushima plants resulted in about $29 billion being wiped from TEPCO's market value since March 11th, following the earthquake, tsunami, and that series of explosions at the plant. How much of a loss are we looking at long term if this situation isn't resolved in at least the next month?
There's really no way to know that in the middle of the crisis like this. There's just too much that we don't know about what direction it's going to go in the future, what the potential liabilities are, who might bear them, and what the implications are for other utilities that own similar types of plants. There's no doubt that the financial implications are significant. Right. There's no doubt that the public perception of both economic and safety risk has been shifted greatly, but there's just no way to know the full extent of it.
Mr. Bradford, we were taking a look here at Bloomberg at what some of the U.S. nuclear companies were doing this week, and we see that they are all down for the week. Does this portend a grim future for them going forward as this discussion about safety and economics goes forward?
There are several respects in which their costs are inevitably going to go up. In particular, the complying with new regulations and the perception of risk by investors and lenders will result in higher costs to them. In addition, the entire concept of a nuclear renaissance, which was essentially on the rocks even before this accident because new nuclear is so expensive in relation to the alternatives, is pretty well out the window, although that has both its pluses and its minuses in terms of the impact on companies involved in the nuclear industry.
At some point, though, as the nuclear companies here in the U.S. and around the world gauge the temperature, if you will, of at least public comment about where nuclear energy goes from here, what are the economics involved in this? Is nuclear energy still a viable alternative for a lot of places, even given what we've seen in Japan?
Well, new nuclear power in the U.S. Is more than twice as expensive as alternatives based on combinations of energy efficiency, natural gas, and renewable energy. So the hope for building new nuclear plants in any case, and this is true in the countries that have been doing it, right, as well as in the U.S., rested entirely on the government's willingness to assure that either taxpayers or customers would bear the extra cost. Right. There just aren't a lot of American or other families that are coming away from this week in front of their television screens saying that they'd really like additional exposure to nuclear risk.
All right. Mr. Bradford, we're going to have to leave it there. Peter Bradford, former member of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, joining us from Washington.